Ladies and gentlemen, hello, and welcome to episode 71 of the Hardly Millennial Podcast, where we are young, dumb, and full of
opinions.
Opinions, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a very special day for a lot of people.
Happy 420!
Happy 420! Yes,
Woo!
ladies and gentlemen, it is 420.
Sorry, I got excited. I couldn't wait. Matthew Lynn, by the way. Here again
My
with
name's
you.
Adam. I hope you guys know that at this point.
I got excited, man. I had to shout it out to the world.
I understand, dude. I understand. It's a big day for a lot of people. For those who don't know, and I'm very surprised if you don't know at this point.
Shame on you if you don't know.
Today is National Pot Smoking Day.
Yes, it is. It is the 20th of April.
Mm-hmm.
A day in which every stoner around the world, at least in our time zone,
Yes.
partakes in getting high.
Getting high. The festivities of marijuana.
Yes.
So, of course, when it came to, what are we going to talk about today? Well, of course, we have to talk about marijuana. That's just a given.
I mean, we don't really have a choice. Our hands are kind of tied today.
Hands are kind of tied. But it's good, though. It's a very wide-range subject. There's a lot that goes into weed, especially now.
Especially nowadays.
And in our generation, especially.
For sure.
I bet you could even argue, aside from us being considered millennials, I feel like you could call us the pot generation, right?
Which is ironic because our parents would have probably liked to have been dubbed the pot generation.
But I would feel like yeah, I mean, that's true. But I feel like in the terms of our parents or even before them, people who actually grew up in their maybe their teens or 20s during the 60s, I would almost call that the hippie generation, which which encompasses psychedelics,
Oh,
really,
for sure.
And weed's included. But we're definitely the pot smoking generation, I feel.
Well, what's funny is when it comes to LSD and all the other hardcore drugs, that our parents always say, "Oh, ours was way better than yours now." Well, not when it comes to weed.
No, not
our
at
weed
all.
these days is something from another world.
Yes,
They have fucking bioengineered that shit, and it's a little more potent
it's pretty
than it
potent
used to be in the
stuff.
past.
Yes. Well, and what's crazy nowadays with weed is there used to be a stigma, right? So if you were somebody who smoked weed, there was definitely a stereotype that was associated with that kind of person, right? There was a
for
look
sure.
and everything that was associated with it. But now we're to a point to where it's everybody does it, right? No matter what everybody can do it, right? So it doesn't matter your profession. We now know there are CEOs of big companies out there who come out and say, "Yeah, I smoke weed every day," and actors and engineers and
It
doesn't
all
matter
age
what
groups,
type.
too.
Yeah.
Because the hippies who made it kind of started the whole thing with weed,
Mm-hmm.
they're old now.
Right.
People from the 60s, they're in their 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like they're old now, so now they're doing it, and then the
Yes.
younger people are doing it. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no age group that isn't partaking these days.
Yes, exactly. But I would almost say that's almost to a fault too. I think there are some people out there who just smoke too much of it.
For sure, I think you can do too much of anything, right? So I guess it would be the difference between a hobby and
Yes.
a problem,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I don't know. I think when it comes to weed, and I think I've touched on this a little bit before with some of our drug in general drug conversations, is where I feel like there are a lot of drugs and stuff out there, especially with weed, where things should be used as a tool, right? So
Yeah.
weed, for example, is now, don't get me wrong, I understand there are actual medical uses for it to where if people smoke it every day,
I mean, let's be real. Most people are
don't,
not
though.
using it for medical purposes.
Yes. So I feel like it's one of those drugs where if you can even call it a drug, really, but
I mean,
it's
whatever,
it's
for the
one
sake of a conversation.
it's one of those drugs where it's if you've had a really bad day, it could be nice to smoke a joint at the end of the day to decompress. Or like if you're about to do something like some sort of abstract thinking, whether it has to do with art or writing, whatever it is, that could possibly be something that could help you think out of the box a little bit. But all of those things become mute if you do it every day, and that tolerance builds up.
That's the issue, is nobody does it only when they're going to be painting.
Like that. Yeah.
Like, either you smoke weed or you don't smoke weed.
Right.
And if you do, you probably do it, at least once a week.
Well, I definitely feel like there's people out there who do it sporadically like that. It's just like how there are smokers out there, like, there are ones like me who are definitely addicted to it and do it all the time. And then you have others
like
out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there are others out there who can, pick up a pack of cigarettes before they go to a party, and then they'll never smoke again for another, couple of years.
Yeah, everybody's different. Everyone has their own flavor.
But I just feel like when it comes to weed, I feel like that's more so just how anything should be treated, really. But just as you said, very few people out there are going to actually, use
no one's
going to
do
regards.
That.
It's either you do it or you don't.
Do it or you don't. It's, I guess the closest thing to relate it to is drinking, like alcohol. But I really hate that argument too, because I don't think it's anything like drinking, personally.
I agree.
But I guess if you're going to compare it to something, that is the closest thing. So just do it like that, maybe just after 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
It's interesting now because, when we were kids and teenagers growing up, if you said that you smoked, it meant that you were a person who went to a parking lot somewhere and waited for a dealer,
right.
Or you went to an apartment or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we became younger adults, and if someone said they smoked, it meant they either did that or they had a medical card, right? They were doing it for medical reasons. But now there's many states, more and more, and a lot of people where it's just recreational.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to have anything wrong with you to smoke weed. You can just choose to do it like liquor or cigarettes.
Yes.
So it's definitely getting a lot less of a stigma of a drug. I think it'll always be called a drug, but... Well, in the same way as nicotine is a drug.
Right, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Well, I do think it's going to be one of those things where in our lifetime, I remember asking somebody once who, this was a few years ago when it just became legal medically in Arizona. Yeah. And I remember, once that happened, I had friends of mine who started to get their green cards and stuff like that. And I asked one of my friends who I knew had a hookup for weed before, needing a medical card for it,
Right.
And so it was just one of those, so why get one if you constantly just have a hookup for it anyway? Because it does cost money to go through that process, especially in Arizona.
It's a couple $100 to get your medical card.
And what he had told me was, he goes, well, because I wanted a piece of history. He goes, at one point, weed's just going to be legal recreationally, everywhere in the country, and I'm going to be able to have this card that is proof that at one point it wasn't.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
It's a lot of money to put into a piece of history.
Yes.
Yeah,
well, I'm sure he obviously reaped the benefits of the convenience of just being able to go himself to, dispensary. But
it's got to feel better for a person to not have to sit in their car and wait for some shady dude or even their friend, just to feel like you can go into an actual building like a Walmart.
Yeah. Well, and it eases the stress I get, because especially here in Arizona where it's only legal medically, if you get pulled over by a cop and you don't have that medical card, but you have weed in your car, they still treat that as a Schedule I, drug.
Yeah, it's at least going to be a fine, if nothing else.
So
But I think that in our lifetime, we're going to see it recreational across the country.
Oh, I do too. I think our kids won't know a country where it was ever illegal.
No, I know that they do it pretty often, but this year again, they already have a bill that's going for nationwide recreational.
Oh, for the 2020 elections?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. They already have a bill going for it. I think they do it every 2 years, 4 years, or whatever.
I don't think this will be the year it gets passed. I think maybe 2024, something like that will get passed.
It'd be interesting if this was the year.
It would be interesting.
That'd be kind of fun. You never know what Daddy T will do. You never know what he's gonna run on, dude.
I don't think Daddy T's on board with the recreational.
He's on board with whatever gets him votes.
I guess that's
he don't give a
true.
fuck.
Has he ever said anything in regards to like the weed bit?
Not that I personally know of specifically.
I don't either.
I'm sure he has some kind of opinion on it.
Yeah, I'm sure he does too. But I don't think he ever like led a platform for or against it though at all.
Just from seeing and observing him, I would imagine that he's fine with it as long as there's money in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He would probably just see it as a business deal, which is honestly how everyone should see it, I think. I don't know why they continue with this war on drugs.
I know. Well, isn't that what happened in Colorado? Like, wasn't the state making so much money off of weed that they actually started giving money back to the people? I heard that somewhere. I could be wrong. But...
So I understand the concept. You're talking about like the Alaska pipeline concept where they make so much money by using the state that they give back a portion of it so you get like a check basically.
Right. And I heard that happened in Colorado because of the weed stuff.
It's possible. I don't know of that happening. I know that tourism goes up like crazy.
Yes.
Not even just sales of cannabis, but tourism just goes through the roof.
Yeah.
Because people flock there to take vacations and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of Coloradians.
Coloradians.
Were very upset when it became legal recreationally. Not because they themselves didn't get to reap the benefits, obviously, but it all of a sudden started driving up cost of living of where they were, and you obviously
they should be happy about that. It makes their houses worth more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but
if you don't have a house, then you'd be upset.
Unless you're in a situation where you're
well,
just
Colorado's not a starter state. It's not a place you go to start out.
Yeah,
it's a place you go in. It's like California.
Yeah.
There'll be parts of Colorado you can start out in, but for the most part, it's a retirement place. I'm fine with that. It doesn't bother me. It's fucking cold in Colorado anyway.
It's true.
I don't like the cold.
It's funny though, dude. Weed is funny, but
what do you think about the whole health benefits thing of weed? Do you buy into it, or do you think it's totally a gimmick?
I think it's partly a gimmick.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about like things like depression and anxiety here before, and we've talked about how although we agree that there are people who actually suffer from the clinical, medical thing that is depression and anxiety, but most of the time when people say they're depressed, it means they're just really, really sad, right?
Right.
But unfortunately, doctors are still just, shoving pills down their throat to help them.
For sure.
And
that's what they do.
So I think there's a lot of people who have convinced themselves that, weed is, weed helps me with my anxiety or helps me with my depression, but I don't think it really does. And if anything, I think it's this snowballing cycle, because what we do know now is that because it's becoming legally, recreationally, and medically, and the reason why people want the weed in the first place is to get you high. Right. Well, we know what these places are doing now, where they're upping the THC levels in weed and lowering the CBD levels in weed, and CBD is the part that actually helps with the anxiety and depression part.
Right.
So what's happening now
THC actually causes anxiety.
Exactly.
So stimulant.
So what's happening now is people are going to these dispensaries, to buy weed for their quote unquote depression and anxiety, now realizing that they're getting this high dosage of THC that's just making it worse. Then what do? They have to smoke more weed now. I must not be smoking enough weed. It's the same way people get addicted to pills, that you become tolerant of it, or the side effects don't go away, and
then you just
have
need
to
more
start
and
doing
more.
that. So, and that's kind of what bothers me with weed is I'm not saying that anybody out there who does it every day is a bad person by any means or anything like that, or any less of a person than I am, or somebody who doesn't smoke weed. But it's one of those things of like, when you are high all of the time, yeah, that might be who you are now because you're high all the time. but it's still not you though.
Right.
So like, just throwing out just a random name for a hypothetical sake. Let's say you have a friend named John, and John smokes weed all the time, and you go and hang out with John all the time, and you have conversations with John all the time. Well, no matter how many
John sounds awesome.
John sounds great. But no matter how many times you're going and talking to this person, and maybe you're having good conversation, but you're still always talking to hi John.
Right.
You're
You
never
never met
talking to
actual
sober John. Exactly. And I think there's a problem of people not giving their true selves a real chance to succeed. They just find ways to make caveats for hi them, for hi me, for hi them.
Yes.
And I think that can be dangerous and lead to some issues down the line for sure.
I think that it can become a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I know when I was younger, in my late teens, I partook in the smoking of the marijuana. Yes. And I remember getting into this cycle of basically waking up and smoking to the point that I was tired, because smoking weed makes you tired.
Yes.
I don't care if you say it's sativa and whatever, it all makes you tired. And then I would combat that tiredness with coffee.
Yes.
So I would make coffee and drink just these crazy fucking amounts of caffeine, dude. Like, I didn't ever touch the rock stars or the energy drinks, but like that level. I was drinking 12, 15, 18 cups of coffee a day. It was insane. And then I would get all hyped up and jittery, so I'd smoke weed again. And I would get tired. And I was in this constant just consuming battle, where I was never going forward. It wasn't like I was broke. I had enough money to sustain this and go to work and stuff. I was living, but I was just stagnant. I wasn't moving anywhere. I wasn't going back. I wasn't going forward. And it just becomes this rabbit hole. And then I think that lifestyle is what leads to the depression.
Yes.
And then the depression is what leads to the anxiety.
Yes.
And then you don't start to deal with it or do anything about it until the anxiety is the physical manifestation. That's where your body is telling you, I'm sick.
Yes.
So when that starts to attack you, you get these panic attacks, then you all of a sudden want to start doing something about it. Because when you have a panic attack, you feel like you're dying.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that's when you finally get to a point where you're like, okay, I'll do something. And the first thing they tell you, if you're honest with the doctor, he'll say, you're perfectly fine. You're healthy as an ox. You need to change your lifestyle.
Yes.
You need to get out of this rabbit hole that you're in. So that, I think, is the poisonous part of weed. That's where the drug part comes in. If you're able to only smoke weed truly recreationally, only when you have other people over, treat it like alcohol.
Yeah.
Then I think it's perfectly fine. I think that you can live a healthy lifestyle. You can be a businessman. You can be the owner of something. It's not going to like stunt your life, if you don't let it.
Yes, and that's the key. And I want to go back to something else you said too in regards to like it makes you tired, right? Because you regardless whether it's an indica
it doesn't
or
matter.
sativa,
Weed makes you tired.
Well, and the thing is, what people don't understand, years ago, I used to know this like weed guru, right? Somebody who
was he an old guy?
He was an old guy. Yeah.
Yep.
The old hippie guy,
like Vietnam era.
But yeah, but he was a guy who like when you would talk to him about weed, you could tell this went beyond of this guy was just a stoner. Like this was like this guy's passion.
He was more of a botanist.
Yes,
like he knew about
100%.
the plant. He knew about the science.
Yes, and he loved it.
But he had long hair and he liked to smoke weed.
Yes, exactly.
And
but he used to tell us a lot about weed and the way people smoke it and the problem with the way people smoke it and things. And one thing that he told us was, he goes, the biggest issue that everybody has when they smoke weed is they pack a bowl and they go, okay, we have to smoke this whole bowl. And then we have to smoke another bowl and then another bowl. And he goes, but all you really need is just one hit.
Yeah.
And then you can ride that for, and I'm sure as well, if, I've definitely been somebody who will smoke bowl after bowl after bowl, and you get super tired and you just want to fall asleep and you want to be lazy. But if you just take that one hit and then you just ride with that hit will actually ride you for most of the day.
Yes.
And you'll actually,
it's true.
That's when you'll feel the effects of a sativa. That's when you'll know, okay, here.
So along my journeys, I too had a guru that I met. It was an older guy. And he would say the same thing. He would go, man, your biggest problem, and then what's going to hurt you the most as you're growing up, is that you're always worried about your next hit.
Yes.
You know, because at that time it was always, how do I load the bowl again? How do I, it's what you're always worried about.
Yeah.
Because you can't really move on and do anything until you achieve that.
Yes.
Right. So he would tell me, he'd be like, you're too obsessed with trying to load the bowl, man. You got to just hit it and then enjoy yourself. It's like, forget about it.
Yeah.
And otherwise it starts to consume you. It starts to become your number one worry.
Yes.
And at that point, then you have a problem. Mm-hmm. So it's amazing, these older guys who have kind of made it that far.
Well, and because they've been through this.
I was just gonna say, that they were that young guy who was always looking for the next hit.
And I think that's most of people's problem. It's like you end up becoming so dependent on it as a way to fill time. Really, is what it is. To where it's like you don't understand. Again, you're not using it as a tool, right?
Right.
If you want to like clean the house one day, and you have a weed that's a sativa, you take a hit of it, and then you just ride it the rest of the day while you're cleaning, and it's not going to make you sleepy because you smoked too much of it.
You think that's where you really start to feel like, because there is a big scientific community within the pot smokers,
right?
Who are actually highly intelligent people.
Yes.
And they talk about things like terpenes and different chemicals that are in the weed, and how different strains of weed can actually make you feel differently.
Yes.
And I know when I was younger and I was smoking, I thought that was bullshit.
Right.
I was like, weed just gets you stoned.
High, yeah.
But you think it's what you're saying, that it's because it's over smoking? That
yes, 100%.
When you do that one hit, that allows you to actually experience the different feelings that you can get from it.
Yes, I think just like any drug, people get locked into this sense of, you take that one hit, when you first start smoking weed in the beginning,
right?
And you're like, oh my, and you get the giggles and you're laughing and you're on cloud 9 and you're having a good time. Well,
or you throw up. I've seen a couple people throw up.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
It's hit or miss.
But then then what happens? You get to this point of like, well, I want to find things more funny. I want to be more giggly. I want to feel higher. So now you're smoking more. Now you're smoking. Well, so now what? It's tolerance build up at that point, right? So now the one hit doesn't do it for you.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate because just as you said, there are different strains that affect you in different ways. But if you put 6 different weeds in front of me, and every day I decide to smoke, okay, I'm gonna smoke 1 on the first day, 2 on the second day, and I smoke 3 bowls of each of those weeds every day, I'm not going to notice I'm not going to notice anything.
Yeah.
But now if I go back and I wake up and I have just 1 hit of weed number 1 on the first day and ride that the rest of the day, and then do the same thing on number 2, I guarantee you I'll be able to say, ooh, I liked 3 the most, 6 made me really tired.
Were you ever able to achieve anything like that when you were younger and you were doing it? Were you ever able to have that much discipline?
I definitely went through stages. So I would definitely go through the stages where, and it's just as I do with smoking cigarettes, Yeah,
well, and because different cigarettes do have different flavor. There's Turkish tobacco. There's native.
Well, I just mean in the sense of like I've been able to get to a point with cigarettes before where I do smoke it socially, right?
Right.
But that ends up falling off the wagon eventually, and the same thing goes with weed. I was able to get to points where I was just taking like a hit or a few hits throughout the day.
Interesting.
And then I was fine. But then, you just all of a sudden you have a day off and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to be lazy today. So what does it hurt to smoke 3 bowls in a row?
Right.
And then, it just goes down from there. But during the times when I was smoking the most was also during a time when I started to have things like depression and anxiety. And it really threw me for a loop because I was somebody who grew up a very happy, very extroverted person, very social butterfly. So it was like, I had never had this issue before.
Well, you never thought you would have to. You're like,
exactly.
I'll just never have that. I'm not that person.
Exactly.
And then you found yourself all of a sudden older in a different lifestyle, and boom.
And I had no clue that weed even had anything to do with it until
you think it's the one thing helping you through it all while you're doing it. Because I've been in a similar situation, not exactly,
right.
But you think that the weed is the one thing helping you, and really. when you're at that point, that's the thing that's hurting you.
Well, exactly, and you become so accustomed to just being high all the time that you don't even question it anymore. And we don't understand that, every, highs have valleys and mountains that you go up and down of. So you get to this point with weed to where, like, even if you don't feel like necessarily high anymore, what you don't understand is, like, well, you are still high.
You are still, yes.
You're just not at the top of the mountain when you first smoke the bowl.
Right.
So then you start convincing yourself, oh, well, it can't be the weed because here I am not stoned and I'm still feeling this way. And then when I got to a point where I was like, hey, I'm going to just quit it all. And then I did. It was like, and it was very strange because it was like, oh, this is familiar again. This is extroverted Adam. This is, this.
Dude, you know what I noticed when I quit smoking? Was how well I slept.
Yes.
Because you think you smoke weed to fall asleep, right? Because weed makes you super tired.
Right.
And it does. But when you fall asleep stoned, you don't wake up refreshed.
No,
you just
wake
don't.
up groggy.
Not in the same way. You might think you are, but you're not. If you go to sleep sober, when you wake up, you are refreshed. You actually slept.
Yes.
And I remember, like, distinctly feeling the difference and going like, holy shit,
I agree.
I haven't slept this well in a long fucking time.
One of the things I noticed when it came to sleep was, we through high school and stuff, we've all been in the situations where, we get 2 to 4 hours of sleep, but we're still able to trudge through the whole day as a generally a pretty normal awake human being at that point. And then I got to this point where I'm like, oh, well, the reason why I can't do that anymore is just because I'm older, right? And there is some validity to that.
Right, a little bit.
It wasn't until then I quit smoking weed and started to get that good sleep again, to where I noticed that if I did get 4 hours of sleep and then had to wake up, I felt so much refreshed. And I was like, oh, this was how to be able, this is how I was able to do this before. It was simply just because I wasn't high.
It's because you weren't high.
But now because you're high all the time and you have that grogginess, you always feel like, all right, I have to get at least my 7 to 8 hours. And that's why I have such an issue with weed anymore. It's like, I don't bag on anybody who smokes it, but
no, not at all.
But it's just one of those things of like, if you are somebody who smokes it and you think you're having these issues, I always say, I'm like, okay, we'll stop the weed, but people don't want to stop the weed, right?
Well, you feel like you can't.
Yeah.
And like, I promise you can.
But it's like, that's always like one of if you are having depression and anxiety, 2 things to start with, if you're a stoner, is diet. It's the first thing that's easy to do is just change up the way you eat.
True.
And stop smoking weed. If neither one of those 2 things work, well, at least you can eliminate those 2 things.
And they will work, I promise.
Yes.
It will.
Exactly.
There is no what if it doesn't, because they literally will.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's to the point where when you smoke weed every single day, you start to not do things like shower every day. You start to not do things like pick up things in your car.
Yes.
It becomes a whole lifestyle of just this buildup, like this plaque on your life.
Well, and people don't realize it's like weed is a stimulant. It gives you a dopamine rush.
Yeah,
and so, but other things that give you a dopamine rush are simple things like finishing a task,
making a new friend,
going out, whatever it is. Well,
smoking weed's a lot more
your
fun.
Body, yeah, right. But your body craves that kind of stuff. Your mind craves that. So if you don't have something that's giving you those dopamine spikes on a daily basis, well, you as a person are just naturally going to go out there and try to find something to give you this dopamine spike. And if you don't do drugs or anything, or
you'll fill it in with something else.
Yeah, you're going to fill it in with something else. Well, now you take somebody who smokes weed all day. Well, you're automatically getting that dopamine spike, which is the reward system for accomplishing something. So now why do you need to accomplish anything?
Well, that's why I say weed has fuck it in it.
Yes.
It's got a chemical in it called fuck it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It really does, though. And that's why it's dangerous, and dangerous may be too strong of a word, but that's why it should just be met with caution for those who like to smoke it a lot.
Yes, for sure. It can be fun. Now, I know for me personally, I'm just an individual. It's an on or off switch. I can't do like recreational smoking.
Yes.
I'm either a smoker every day or I'm not a smoker every day, right? But I think that a really healthy way to do it that I'm not able to do, but just giving some advice that I can't follow. I think that if you could live a life where you smoked weed and you smoked cigarettes, okay, you indulged, but you did it in a way to like, you only smoke weed if someone else has it, or if you're at a get together and someone else has a joint, you'll hit it. You know what I mean? Or if someone else offers you a cigarette, you'll take the cigarette and smoke it. But if you could control yourself to never buy your own, to never actually buy a pack of cigarettes, to never actually go buy an ounce, you know what I mean? Then I think that would help to limit you doing it by yourself.
I agree.
Because pretty much anything becomes an issue. They say, like, drinking. You're an alcoholic if you drink alone, right? Well, you're probably a stoner, and you're probably a cigarettist, whatever the fuck that's called, if you do those things alone, right? That's when you know that you are addicted to something. It's when you do it by yourself. So you should try to avoid that.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that if you are addicted to those things like weed or cigarettes, I do think it is possible to get to a point where you do them, sporadically or occasionally, whatever, recreationally.
You just gotta have some self-control.
Right. And I think the key to doing that is you can get to that point, but you have to quit it for a very extended piece of time.
Correct. You have to take the leash off for a while. You can't just you can't have unrealistic expectations.
Yes, and that's an issue that I, as a cigarette smoker, and I know other cigarette smokers who have had the same issue, right? So me, for example, and if you ask a lot of cigarette smokers, they'll all, kind of say the same thing, to where none of us really, especially those of us who are like 10 plus years of smoking, none of us really expect to fully quit in our lives, right?
Yeah. It's
just that sense of any time that I'm not smoking a cigarette is better than time smoking a cigarette. So I, as somebody who's very addicted to it, I'm very convinced that I can get to a point to where I do smoke it socially or just at parties while drinking, whatever it is. But as somebody who's been smoking for 14 years, I can't expect to just quit for 6 months and then be able to just jump into that.
Yeah, no, your brain takes longer than that, dude.
Exactly.
It knows.
Exactly.
It remembers.
So it's like you have to get to, and I would say the same thing about weed. If that's how you want to be with weed, well, you have to remember of how long you've been smoking it all the time. So you have to go a longer period, maybe not a longer period than what you spent smoking, but like me, I feel like I'd have to go at least a year without having any cigarette period before I could even think about indulging in one at a party one day randomly.
Right.
And then maybe then I could get to a point where I can just associate it with that.
But I feel like nobody who is okay with smoking every single day, none of those people have ever woken up and said, okay, I want to quit. It's you plan that you're going to do it forever.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then that becomes the excuse of why you keep doing it.
Yes.
Until something really bad happens.
Yeah.
And then that really bad something is what makes you stop doing it, because you live through the bad thing, and then you fear that bad thing happening again, and that you won't live through it the next time.
I agree.
And that fear is what keeps you from doing the thing that you're okay with doing in your head.
Yes, I think the people out there who like quit these types of things and do a cold turkey, it's always met because they're taking advantage of an event that has happened in their life, whether that's positive or negative. So there have been times in the past that I have quit smoking cold turkey, And it was simply just because I was met with this situation where I woke up, wasn't immediately able to have a cigarette. I had to go do something. This thing that I had to go do, I couldn't smoke at, and I had to be there for a while. So now you're talking about not only did I go the whole night while I was sleeping not smoking, but now I'm talking about another 8 hours not smoking. So now I'm at 16 hours without a cigarette. And then it got to a point to where, like, when it reached like hour 18 and it was time to go to bed, it was like, well, I could have had a cigarette that night, but it was just like, all right, well, I'm tired. I might as well just take advantage of this and go to bed and finish the 24 hours.
Well, that's called having self-control.
Right.
You just practice self-control that day.
But at that point, though, it was also just taking advantage of a day where I wasn't able to have a cigarette readily.
Right.
You know, and it's the same thing if something like bad happens in your life that maybe pushes you to want to quit smoking. Well, what you're doing is you're taking advantage of the event and using that to help further your, quitting expedition.
So it is totally a mindset. Yes. The only way I was able to quit smoking weed was I had to tell myself that it's not that I can't have it. It's that I can have it whenever I want, but I choose not to have it.
Yeah, I've heard that theory before.
Just the wording in my brain is it's the choice. Not having the choice drives me fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy. It makes it the only thing I think about. But if the choice is there, and I just choose not to do it, but I can anytime I want, then it's not so hard for me. Same thing with food, too. If I have like a really bomb-ass pastry in the kitchen or something.
Right.
Right now, I have a really awesome sweet roll in the kitchen, and I've had it in there all day long.
Yeah.
And I know that at some point today I'm going to eat the sweet roll.
Right.
I'm totally going to. And it's that mindset of I can have it anytime I want that I've made it to, almost sunset now.
Right.
And I haven't eaten the sweet roll. But if you told me, Matthew, here's a bomb ass fucking sweet roll, it's delicious, it's so good,
right?
But you can't have it. I'm gonna sneak downstairs when you take a nap or something. I'm gonna eat the fucking sweet roll. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the choice.
See,
for me.
I have definitely tried that mindset before because I've had other people tell me about them doing that exact same thing when trying to quit smoking cigarettes. I know
it might not work for everyone.
Yeah, because I know cigarette smokers who have quit that way where they'll literally carry around a pack of cigarettes with them and just choose not to smoke all day. But me, I'm one of those people, at least with cigarettes, I'm one of those people where if it's there, I'm going to smoke it. If it's not there, I really want to go buy some so I can smoke it.
Right.
It's like there's never that in between. I mean, maybe with weed that mindset could work a little more because that one's definitely more of the psychological addiction aspect than the actual, chemical
weed
addiction.
You're not gonna get the shakes if you don't smoke weed.
Exactly.
I mean, you're fine.
You get maybe a little irritable, but
you get irritable
because you can't smoke.
Because you can't smoke. Yeah, not because you're in pain or anything. You're fucking fine. But no, if you don't have a cigarette for 36, 48 hours, by day 2,
start having those withdrawals.
Well, your back will get sweaty. Like you'll literally become sweaty, have headaches. You won't be hungry. Like there's physical withdrawals from nicotine. There's not physical withdrawals from weed. No. Get the fuck over yourself.
Yeah.
There's not.
Those are things that have always pissed me off because I have met people in the past who have tried pulling that bullshit with me.
Yeah, no, you're uncomfortable. I promise you're probably uncomfortable.
Yeah, like I said, when I quit, there was definitely an irritability that was associated with not having it.
Yeah.
But like you said, I would take quitting weed over quitting smoking
any day. The real thing about it is that you get bored.
Yes.
So much of your day, and this is with cigarettes or weed.
Yes.
This is part of the reason I think, honestly, why it's so hard to quit smoking, either of the two things, is that so much of your day becomes ritual around escaping what everyone else is doing and having time to yourself, which human beings need to be healthy, and just... Usually it's to partake outside. So you go out into nature and it involves taking deep breaths.
Yes.
So you're inhaling and you're exhaling and you're doing it calmly and deeply. There's smoke involved, but it's still a breathing exercise that you're doing away from everyone else, usually in nature.
I had a teacher in high school once who was literally talking about that exact same thing when he
really?
was talking about cigarette smoking. And now his views were a little skewed because he was trying to say that the chemical part of it isn't as big of a part as we think. And I'm here to tell you from personal experience.
Oh, no, it is. They'll fuck your lungs up.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And
but it's still breathing.
exactly. Well, and that's what he was talking about. He was talking about how, when you're a smoker, people think that when they're stressed out, they'll have a cigarette and the cigarette makes them feel better. But what they don't understand they're doing is when you're in a stressful situation, what are you doing? You're taking yourself out of the stressful situation.
You're usually going outside,
yes,
into the sunlight, into the fresh air, and you're taking deep breaths.
Exactly.
For about 10 minutes. You get your mind off of it.
Yeah. Well, and on the boredom thing too.
Yeah, that's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
When you take that away, all of a sudden, now you have all these holes in your day.
Yeah.
And the best way for me is, idle hands are the devil's playthings. You got to keep your hands busy. You find shit to do.
Well, and that's what happens. One thing this teacher also told us too was he goes, if you have 20 cigarettes, if you smoke a pack a day, so that's 20 cigarettes.
Which is pretty average, honestly.
Yeah.
It's pretty normal.
And you're talking about, let's say it takes an average of 7 minutes to smoke each cigarette. Yeah. So then all of a sudden you decide to quit. Well, that's now 140 minutes
2 hours
of your day.
That's almost 2.5 hours
that
of your
you
day.
have, that you're like, what the fuck do I do with myself?
Just find shit. Try to be as constructive as you can. I guess probably most people resort to their phone.
Yeah.
On day one, because you don't know what else to do. So you try to find like a phone game or Facebook or something. But then you hit this wall. What happens, because I've been here, I've been at this point. When you try to do lazy exercises to fill in that blank time, well, you're not stoned.
Yes.
You're sober, and you're trying to do things like watch TV or watch a movie or play video games while you're sober. And it's not as much fun as it was before.
Nope.
Because now your brain is aching and begging you to go outside and do shit, go be constructive.
Yes.
So now all of a sudden it's, oh, these games aren't fun. Oh, I'm even more bored. And it pecks away and eats away at you until you finally go smoke. And then you go, oh, this game's fun as hell. Yeah, because you're fucking stoned, you zombie.
Yes.
Yeah. So try to be as constructive as possible, I would say. And for me, it helps to do things like something like exercising or something where I can see results happen.
Yes.
Because seeing those results gives you that stimulation to keep doing it.
One thing that I've always tried to do on like days that I know I'm going to go like cold turkey without like cigarettes or in the past
for those
weed,
days.
right?
Yeah.
And it was the things I always do is I'm like, okay, I always have to choose a day that I have off because doing it at work just doesn't work.
It's not fair to anyone else either.
No.
Don't make it everyone else's problem that you're choosing to quit.
Exactly. So you choose a day off and then you just get out of your house for that entire day.
Yeah,
and you
just
do
go shopping.
things like, you go to the mall, go window shop and everything.
Don't spend a bunch of money
No.
now that you're going to feel bad about when you get home and smoke to feel better.
But then what I'll do is all of a sudden you look, so like let's say you've decided to, quit the day before, right? So you go through that 8 hours of sleeping where you don't have one at all. Yeah. So then all of a sudden you're window shopping and let's say you get caught up in Spencer's looking at some shirts or whatnot. Then all of a sudden you look at it and you're like, oh, cool, another hour went by. I'm at 10 hours now.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you go do this. And then later that day you're like, maybe you're really craving something. So like, what I'm going to do? I'm going to put myself in a situation where I literally cannot have one for a couple hours. You go see a movie.
And sometimes you have to do that.
Yeah.
And the harder the addiction, sometimes you need support to help you through those moments.
Exactly.
And that's where like with AA and stuff, you'll get a sponsor. Someone who, when you're in those moments,
you can call them.
You can call them and they can keep it away from you. Because some addictions truly are chemical. Some really fuck with your brain. And I respect those. I'm not poo-pooing addiction here. I'm just saying weed is not one of those.
Yes.
You don't need a sponsor to get off of weed.
And like I said, I've known people in the past who try to treat it like that, and it just angers me because I'm just like, there are people out there who are trying their damnedest to quit heroin, and you're fucking acting like you have the shakes because you can't smoke a plant.
No,
Get
go
the
outside,
fuck out of here.
Go run around the block. Get yourself tired. You're wound up. You're fucking bored.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than being bored, dude. Being bored fucks with human beings. You gotta keep them busy, man.
Well, and that's what the issue comes with the people who get stoned all the time is they get stoned all the time and they're just sitting around, So now you're bored, but your brain is getting a reward for being bored.
Well, it turns the board off. You're totally okay. You're content with sitting there staring at the wall. That's not boring at that point. It's fun.
Touche, yeah.
And I don't think, I wanted to bring this up earlier too, is I don't think it matters like how rich you are. Like, because people will bring up, if I'm really super wealthy, if I have enough, or maybe not super wealthy, but I'm well off, I have enough money that I can afford to smoke weed every single day, and I still go to work, and, I'm living life. Well, I don't think you're living your best life still. I think it doesn't have to affect you financially for it to become an issue. Yeah. I think that even rich people will fall into this rabbit hole, this psyche rabbit hole. Because it really, at no point when you're smoking weed every day, at no point are you upset that you're poor.
Yes.
It's never like, I need to quit so I have more money. It's perfectly fine. That's never an issue on your mind. It's always, I need to quit because I need to stop being so lazy, or I'm starting to gain a lot of weight, or, I don't see my friends as much as I used to. Those are the reasons why, as soon as you get stoned and you're high, the first thing you think about is, I don't want to do that again.
Yeah.
After a little while, after many years of smoking, you start to want to stop smoking.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that money has anything to do with that.
No, I don't either.
I think every human is vulnerable to it.
I think it's literally just the way that it affects your psyche.
Yes.
You get to this point to where you're trying to figure out why you don't have the motivation to do things that maybe you once was able to do. We know now one cool thing with weed becoming more prominent recreationally is there's been more studies done about the effects of marijuana. And so we know now that marijuana will do things like affect your memory, affect your ability to learn, affect your ability to retain information. So now you're talking about you're literally walking around in a daze. And you don't even realize that you're walking around in a daze.
They call you a zombie for a reason.
Yeah. One of the most amazing things I realized when I had first quit smoking weed, the first time, it took a few times, but the very first time, time that I did it, and I went a long period of time without doing it, one biggest thing that I realized was when I was having conversations with people, it was the way that I spoke. I was all of a sudden using better grammar when I spoke. I was pulling out words from my, pulling out words out of my ass that I didn't even know I still remembered. I was sharper, exactly. Yeah. And so, but it's those things that you don't realize you lose until all of a sudden you're able to gain it back, and you're like, holy shit,
it never went anywhere.
Very different.
It's always been in there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we become so accustomed to just being stoned all the time. It's like I said, that's why I have that thing of like, well, I'm not really talking to you. I'm talking to, Stone John. I'm talking to Stone Sally. I'm talking to Stone Vince, whatever it is. And that can really suck, because then how do you really know somebody when they're just always stoned all the time?
Well, you don't.
You might get along great and be best friends with Stoner John, but what happens when John decides to quit smoking? And not to bring this to
the same John, is he?
Yeah. Well, not to bring this to a relationship conversation, but I think that issue happens in a lot of relationships that don't end up lasting. People will meet their significant other in a bar, and both their hobby is to go out with friends every weekend and drink. So you're constantly getting this drunk person. You meet somebody and you guys like to smoke weed a lot. So now you're meeting somebody, you guys are both stoned all the time.
But then you have to go home and go to work
Stoned
and
Adam
shit.
and Stone Sally get along great together, but maybe sober Adam and sober Sally not so much.
And you can't just be stoned all the time.
Exactly.
Even stoners have to be sober sometimes.
Exactly. But I think those are reasons why weed can be dangerous. And even if you do like smoking weed, it goes with the same thing of getting drunk. One of the reasons why I'm not a big drinker and I don't like to get drunk every weekend isn't necessarily because I don't like the feeling of being drunk, but it's if you get drunk all the time, well, you build that tolerance and it loses its flavor. Mm-hmm. So I'll truly be able to enjoy being drunk more than the person who maybe drinks every other day and gets drunk will be able to enjoy it.
Dude, the reason I don't drink every weekend is because I know I'll become an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I know my personality, I know myself, and I don't have self-control like that.
Funny enough,
I'm an on or off switch kind of person.
Funny enough, alcoholism is something that deeply runs my family on both my parents' side of the family, and it's just something I've never had an issue with. And I've had like the binges of like 4 days out drinking with friends and
Oh, I've definitely done that too, but it was never I've never drinking alone. I can truly say I've never had an alcoholic beverage by myself.
Oh, so I definitely have, but like I said, I
can't.
I'm never
It's not that I'm against it. I would love to.
You just can't.
I just know I would love it too much,
See,
and I wouldn't stop doing it.
Alcohol is just something I don't have that issue with.
I'm not hating.
But weed, I have that issue with. Cigarettes, I have that issue with. It's just, it's weird, the different addictions that affect different people. But
you know, it's really funny that I feel like I was expecting the conversation to go very differently today. Yeah. I was, because we discussed that we were going to talk about weed before the podcast here, because it's, 420. And I thought it was going to be much more glorifying it. And it became much more of a conversation, almost like a public awareness conversation.
Yeah.
I don't want you guys to think, the viewers here, I don't want you guys to think that we are against smoking weed or against stoners.
No, I'm actually for all the drugs.
Yeah,
perfectly honest.
Perfectly honestly, I'm perfectly down with smoking. I think if you make less than $250,000 a year, why are you not smoking weed? But just being two individuals who have, a decade or more of experience in our young lives with it, just want to pass on some knowledge that we've learned to you guys.
Yeah.
This is kind of our platform to talk for an hour and have people listen. So, but I don't want it to get twisted either that, Adam and Matt hate weed, because we definitely don't.
No, we definitely don't. But these are things that I think are very important. And the reason why it's so prudent to have these kind of conversations is because we are in a period of time where everybody is just so focused on glorifying it because everybody wants it to be legal, right? It's this fight of making it legal everywhere.
And it's almost like people will say anything it takes just to get it legal.
Exactly.
But then you start to get misinformation, man.
And I believe everything, even the good things out there that are fun to partake in and healthy to partake in, everything in moderation. I mean, exercising is super healthy for you, but you can overwork yourself.
You can exercise your bones into fucking dust.
Exactly, and weed is no different. And the reason why I think it's super important to let these things know is because I went through this 3-year lull where I couldn't figure out what the fuck was wrong with me. And one of the biggest contributing factors to it that I was so unaware of at the time was the fact that I was stoned all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you to take it from somebody who wasted 3 years of their life.
That's where we're coming from.
Depressed
and you don't have to do it that way.
Yeah.
Whereas smoke weed.
Yeah.
Smoke weed, but just not every day.
Just recreationally. It's a recreational drug treated like one.
And I think that honestly, I would have a lot better memories and a lot more fun occasions in my past had I have taken my own advice. Had I have only smoked at special occasions, I would have gotten really fucking stoned and probably had a really good time. Whereas because I smoked every day,
it was just whatever.
I still smoked at those occasions, but it didn't make it any more special.
Well, and that's another reason why I think a last note here. It's another reason why I think it's important to do it in moderation, because I remember the first time that I had quit it for a very long extended period of time. And then I had a friend come over and we ended up smoking. All of a sudden, the feelings that I first got the first time I ever smoked weed in my life started to come back to me.
Oh, no shit.
I
started
to have the giggle fits. I started everything was just funny to me. I truly felt like I was on cloud 9. I was in a place this was the funniest part. I was in a place that I smoked weed all the time in by myself or with other people. But because I had gone so long without smoking it and then smoked it again, that how when you first started smoking weed, you got that paranoia of everybody knows.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I started to get that back again. Like, oh my God, the people outside know they're going to come knocking on the door.
Because you didn't have any tolerance.
Exactly.
So imagine that every time it's like Christmas or Thanksgiving.
Yes, I truly got to enjoy it again like I enjoyed it when it was the reason why you started smoking weed all the time in the first place was because of that feeling.
I bet that you could smoke weed once a month and still get that feeling every time.
I'd agree.
I'd say any more than once a month, you're going to start to really build a tolerance.
Yes.
But if you have a date or it's the third Friday or whatever, if you did it once a month, you could probably smoke as much as you want that day. And I bet you it would kick ass again the next month when you did it again.
Well, and just as you were saying earlier, just save it for those special occasions where, let's say you're at home and all of a sudden, a friend comes over and he's like, hey, I brought a joint. Let's all smoke it. Cool. Enjoy the joint with your friends, and you're probably going to enjoy it more because you never smoke.
And you may actually find yourself saying, no, I'm good sometimes. It's amazing. Because I had someone tell me that actually in the past. I forget who. I think it was the weed guru guy I was talking about earlier. Tell me that that you don't have a problem if you can say no to it.
Yeah.
If there's times where you go, let me hit it. And then there's legitimately just as many times where you go, no, I'm good. Then it's not affecting your life whatsoever.
Yes, I agree.
But if you find that maybe you don't think about it all the time, but every single time it's offered to you, you can't remember any times where you said no.
Yeah.
Just challenge yourself to maybe say no the next time.
Yeah.
Just do it,
And that goes back to
have control over it.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier, to where I think the way to truly get to that point, if you are somebody who smokes it every day, is quit it, but you have to quit it for a long time before you say yes again.
And sign up for a sport or like a pottery class or something.
Yeah, get practice in saying no before you say yes again.
Yeah, I bet. I've never tried it because I still smoke cigarettes. I've never successfully quit.
Me as well.
I did quit cigarettes for one whole year once, which I think every smoker has
that's
story.
like my next goal. I don't even have that story yet.
No, I did. I quit. I smoked nothing, not even any cigarette. I smoked nothing for a whole year.
Cool.
And then just chose to start smoking again because I'm an idiot. But I bet you the same would hold true, where you could probably smoke cigarettes once a month and be at a point in your life where you're not addicted to cigarettes.
I think so also, but
I bet you could.
Just as you said earlier, you got to put on the leash for a little bit.
You got to. It's the human brain, man. No one can get away with it.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. There's chemicals in all of our brains, and it'll get you
all the time, man. All the time.
And on that note, happy 420, everyone.
420. Smoke a bowl.
You've listened.
For us.
You've done your responsible part for the day. Now go smoke a bowl.
Go smoke a bowl, ladies and gentlemen. And remember to like, comment, subscribe. And if you made it to the end of this podcast, go ahead and write #weed in the descriptions.
#weed.
#weed.
2 E's, 1 D.
There you go. 2 E's, 1 D, ladies and gentlemen. But anyways, remember, we also have a Patreon, www.patreon.com/Hardly Millennial. Thank you so much for listening. Smoke a bowl for Matthew and I. And Matthew, any final thoughts?
Smoke weed every day.
Smoke weed.
But not really. It's bad for you.
It's bad
Bye,
for you.
guys.
Bye.